Oh my gosh, I think we're live. It's Angel, it's Lucky, it's the Modern Relics podcast. We're back again.
We are very, very quickly, I might add.
The prominent stars of stage and screen are here for your podcast enjoyment one more time. Except I've never done any stage or screen work, so maybe we're just podcasting.
Behold the beauty and glory that we are.
Oh man, what a week! So I didn't get our last pod up until day before yesterday, Sunday night maybe. I think because you had left Saturday, right? And yes, I got busy.
Well, I left early Sunday morning.
I put it up Saturday night. So if you're listening to us instead of watching us, you're kind of getting two this week, which is great news for you and for us. Thanks.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot's happened. Just a lot of fallout from the CrowdStrike Microsoft. Hey, we put a change of logic in our core, code, and then released that where nobody got to test anything kind of stuff, which has just led to a ton of fallout. I mean, everyone's going through it. If you're in business, I'm sure. There's still, where I work at Redacted, 7,000 things that are still offline from all that is a huge win compared to where we were a week ago. But
you got all the booger eaters scrambling.
Booger eaters are scrambling. Executives are scrambling.
Yeah.
It's just been a lot. There's been a lot going on the work front. Not a whole lot on the personal front, but quite a bit in the news. So
there is.
How was your trip back? So you came out here, you worked a little bit. Yeah. You learned a little bit about the lay of the land. You experienced some of that dry heat. What happened?
Yeah.
How was the ride home?
The ride home was actually fairly pleasant, other than the god-awful 6 o'clock flight. But, man, you ain't kidding when you say, what is it, Harry Reid Airport?
Yeah.
That airport is the most efficient airport in the planet.
It's a fucking turnstile, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I probably could have shown up an hour later and would have been fine.
Yeah.
But it was, and the lines weren't short. They're just fast. And so you get there and you're like, oh no. And then you see the speed of the line moving. And you're like, oh, this actually isn't going to take that long. And you get in line, and before you know it, you're at the front. And man, I didn't even see my bag get taken at check-in because the guy who I just got done putting the little tag on it, and some dude came up to me, swooped it up, and went, okay, so this is going here? Yep, okay, I'll go put it on. Your escalator's over there, go on. And I was like, wow, cool, all right, bye.
He just threw a smoke bomb, and then him and your stuff is gone. Yeah.
And so, and then I head up, and security just whipped me right through it. I almost got whiplash on the way out of it. Just cracked my spine.
I meant to ask you, because Vegas is one of the airports, not every security checkpoint, but one of the big ones anyway, has a new system where it's it's a total body scan, and it's also a total bag scan. So you don't have to take your shoes off. You don't have to unpack your cameras or your laptops in not all, but some of them, where they're just set it there on the conveyor belt and get your ass through here and do the put your arms up thing. And then it goes through and they're like, go, go, go. And you just get your shit. No shoes, no belts. You're just off the scene. Did you get to go through that one, or did you have to take Okay.
I had to take my shoes off and then couldn't wear a belt. But yeah, it was, and that was through all the different flights that I had. Twice I got a bag check, but it was quick. It wasn't like they're pulling everything out going, what is this?
Yeah.
The minute I mentioned that it was tattoo equipment, the person's like, oh, okay, never mind, get out of here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was still remarkably fast,
regardless
of whether or not I had. Yeah. So and then I got home and went and hung out with the family, got some food, and my wife brought my dog to pick me up from the airport, and he was just like, oh, you're home.
Nice.
And then I promptly took probably a 3-hour nap, and then just been kind of cruising. I've gotten a bunch done today. Been
Nice.
yeah, so it's been pretty productive since. But yeah, good travel on the way back home. So I'm very happy. I've already booked my next flight. We're good to go. So
I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have Thursday. My father is coming to visit. I haven't seen Pop in, I think, since I moved down here. Maybe right after that when I went up, because I drove up to your neck of the woods.
yeah,
So I'm really excited for that. I think he could use a vacation. It's going to be good to spend some time with him, kind of show him how things around the homestead have progressed since he saw it last, which was the day I got here. So yeah, I'm excited about that. But outside of that, it's been pretty smooth sailing. So
that's cool.
not too
That's
bad.
cool.
So one thing we were talking about offline was following up on that Las Vegas alien update, right?
Yeah, I was
like
kinda
there
curious
was a
'cause-
sighting back in, I think it was April.
And the reason I ask
Yeah.
is because, and I kind of brought this up. Excuse me. I brought this up because my son arbitrarily, just to put something on the background, I think night before last while he was cooking dinner, he put on M. Night Shyamalan's classic Signs, and it clicked in my brain. I was like, oh yeah, like I wonder what happened with that, because I haven't heard anything since. And normally, the tinfoil hat people keep these stories going in certain channels. If it's as much of a significance as that particular incident was, and I haven't seen anything. So since it's your neck of the woods, I kind of hit you up. I was like,
Yeah.
have you heard anything about that? Because we talked about it, but
Well, and I think it should be more covered, because the
Yeah.
update that we have, what have the experts said about the Las Vegas aliens claim? So after technically analyzing the video that was sent in from the cell phone footage of the family that called it in, Scott Roeder of Evidence Room Animation and Exhibits told News Nation and the Economic Times the video had not been altered. So confirming the video's original, it was not edited. He tried to see if there was something added to the video and found it to be 100% authentic.
so
No updates after that.
Raw as raw gets.
No updates
That's
after. Now you'd imagine with findings from that, and then 3 or 4 other sources that took a look at it said the same thing. One person said, well, it's probably a flashlight and some shadow work done by another family member off screen, and they debunked that. Nobody followed up. That's it.
Wow.
I went through, I think, 4 or 5 Google pages of search results, like 5 deep. Like I can find information on the original. Cynthia Fassler says, hi guys. Hello. Thanks for joining. I found the original
Hi,
story.
Cynthia.
I found a lot of like corroborating stories, the police response comment. That's it. Nobody said anything after that, which is really bizarre, because you'd imagine the tinfoil folks would be absolutely all over it. Like, see, I told you. So, and I think the reason we kind of covered it was at the time there was like congressional hearings on some whistleblowers around some stuff. The unidentified, whatever they're calling aerial vehicle. Is that right? UAV now instead of UFO. So there's a lot of like hubbub around that, but nothing, not local news, not nobody else. They're just like, yeah, I guess it's real and it happened. So there you have it. Very interesting stuff. So for any of the other tinfoilers out there, sorry. That literally was like, yep, it's here. Some dude authenticated it. Have a good day. Kind of weird. So that's our update from the Las Vegas alien stuff, as according to Economic Times and News Nation. In other probably big news, man, we have a new Doctor Doom.
Hold on, I'm having an issue here
Uh-oh.
with my computer. Sorry.
Dude, imagine this podcast and technology issues.
I know, right? Well, I'm an idiot, and I tried to open up the YouTube to kind of keep a track of
Yeah.
the chat.
Yeah.
Right. and yeah, I just literally, it came on in the audio and I couldn't figure out how to turn the audio off.
Oh yeah,
and so
the mute stuff.
I just wiped out all of my stuff that I pulled up for the whole show.
All the show notes are gone. We're gonna have to wait.
Yeah, all show notes are gone. So I'm gonna just you just brought up Doctor Doom.
Yeah, let's go there, because I think here's my take on the Doctor Doom stuff. We basically get a unmasking from Kevin Feige and the other MCU dudes at Comic-Con, right? So I love the headline with something akin to blowing the roof off of Hall H, as they normally do. And what happened here was, to a thunderous applause, by the way, the Doctor Doom character steps forward, unmasked. Guess who it is? It's Robert Downey Jr. Now, my case that I'm going to make is, I have one experience with Doctor Doom, and that was from the original Fantastic Four movie that I saw, which I think was in 2000, between 2004 and 2010, somewhere in there. That one with like Jessica Alba and Chris Evans.
The original. It's actually not the original. It's the second. There was one done in the late 80s, but this was
the most bigger budget one.
Right, absolutely.
So yeah, Julian McMahon played Doctor Doom in that one, and I thought he was not the lowest point of the film. I thought he did fine, but it was kind of like a cornball. Like Michael Chiklis was in that, and I liked Michael Chiklis, and I thought, okay, well, that was kind of fun. But my argument for RDJ is that he's not a good actor; he's an excellent actor.
Yes.
And to Kevin Feige, he's here to put butts in seats. That's the only reason, I think, is, hey, the Eternals flopped. Ant-Man and the Wasp and the Quantumanium, whatever they did, was not very, didn't rake in a bunch of dollars. And
they didn't rake in any of my dollars.
I think it's starting to go downhill. And so they're like, you know who really kicked ass for us in the first block? Robert Downey Jr. kicked ass for us in first block. Let's see what he's up to.
Right?
And I think that's literally, no offense to RDJ, because I love him. Truly. I think that's the only reason he's been cast in this, is because he knows how to navigate the franchise after being in it for a decade. And he is an exceptionally popular actor in the franchise among fans. That's my argument.
And I think some know nothing as far as the MCU, the comic universe executive, swarmy executive, but smart monetarily, went, we need to inject something into this dying franchise, and why not? We can write anything we want with all of the multiverse stuff, so let's just throw as much money at RDJ as we can to do what he did to the Iron Man franchise and Avengers franchise and all of that. Mm-hmm. And they thought it was the greatest idea ever. Why pick somebody else when we can put RDJ into pump new, new blood back into it?
Knows the media circuit, knows how to keep a secret when he's supposed to. Been doing it for a decade. High fan favorite. Also a brilliant actor. They'll probably have to pay through the nose for this, especially if it sets up future like Fantastic Four movies or stuff like that. But
it's a worthwhile gamble. People are either going to watch it because they're ignorant of the source material and they just love the MCU and RDJ, or they're going to hate watch it. Either way,
for creative deficit perspective, we're batting 1,000. From a risk averse perspective, we're also batting 1,000. Who else would you cast when you've got so many right? So who is Doctor Doom? Why is this not a good idea in your opinion?
And it isn't. And I think as a Marvel purist, there's going to be a lot of pissed off people. Will we watch it anyway out of just pure morbid curiosity as to how this is portrayed? Most likely. But what is going to end up happening, as we all have kind of speculated at this point, anybody who understands the Doctor Doom character from his history and inception, that they cannot make it the original 616, which the 616 universe is the main universe within Marvel. All of the other spin-off kind of universes, whenever they want to do other kind of storylines or rewrite a storyline, like the Ultimate Universe and all of these other universes, and they all at some point in time converge and touch each other, which is what the multiverse kind of concept that Doctor Strange kind of built into the world is about. That he's going to have to be a multiverse
Also
version
kind
of
of-
Tony Stark.
Yeah, also kind of a license to do whatever the fuck they want on a moment's
it is-
notice, right?
It's a magic wand for
Yeah.
sure. It is the, for like Doctor Who fans, it's the sonic screwdriver. Sonic screwdriver can do whatever the storyline needs it to do. And there's, you know, other franchises that kind of have a sonic screwdriver. The multiverse is the sonic screwdriver for Marvel, where they can just kind of go, we don't have to explain it, just point at the multiverse.
Yep.
And then that's the explanation.
Oh, this isn't plot convenient? Observe a new multiverse thread. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I gotcha.
So, and that's kind of what's going to happen here, as everyone can imagine, that the writing is going to have to go in that direction. That either, and it's going to be one or the other. Either this is a multiverse version of Tony Stark, where things went sideways for him when he was younger, and his
think so?
Iron Man suit brought him into Latveria, which is, they're going to have to put him in Latveria. That's where Doctor Doom is from. He's the king of Latveria. So he's either going to, at that point, split off and go become a bad guy like he is over there doing science, because Doctor Doom is a scientist.
Feels like
And
the
he has-
story arc would be better that way, but it also feels like it's way on the nose. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
And then, so, or
Yeah.
that 616 Tony Stark is a better version of Victor Von Doom, but then
Yeah.
it would but it can't, because then it would wipe away Tony's dad and all of the other stuff that comes along with it. There's just no way around it that he would have to, the way that they would write it is there was a split in the timeline where then he becomes Victor Von Doom as a scientist, as somebody who's built armor, as somebody who then like broke away from his family name, all of that in that timeline, and then became Victor Von Doom and became the leader and dictator of Latveria.
like it makes it makes sense to me from a storytelling perspective if they do that, unless the heroes that he has to fight against are also from the same timeline that the first block was in, because then the evil Tony Stark, Victor Von Doom guy would then have to somehow traverse back into this multiverse thread where they're
For
like,
what reason?
Tony? No, that's not Tony. How could it be? Like,
Right.
I don't know. That feels weird to me.
So, and then the character Victor Von Doom wears the armor and the mask due to heavy scarring, you know, stuff like that. He was pretty damaged, and it, depending on what depiction you read, is how he ended up getting that way. But he's primarily, like, Doom is the villain's villain of the MCU, of the Marvel Universe. You've got your, you know, Galactus and Thanos being your kind of space bad guys. You've got Kingpin and a bunch of guys being your main, like, street level bad guys. You've got Magneto being the X-Men's big bad, or Apocalypse, right? But as far as like the overarching Earth, you know, big bad guy in the Marvel Universe, it's Doom. 100% Doom.
Yeah.
He's fought the Avengers, he's fought the X-Men, he's fought Spider-Man, he's fought mainly the Fantastic Four is kind of his main villain group, but like,
He's the
And obviously
Shredder to
this
the
is-
Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
right. So, and he's basically the vehicle to add the Fantastic Four to the new MCU. But they've decided to multiverse it as well, which, if you like, I guess they could play around with Reed Richards opening up a multiverse portal, which would make sense in the context of Reed Richards, but it seems like lazy writing in this way right
My
now.
hope
just
is that they don't go back to New York during the Chitauri fight scene when Tony flies off into space, and then while he's up there, something flashes where he splits off at that point or some shit. because that just seems to be the point that they always drive back to for his like emotional arc as Tony Stark. So I don't know. Like, I'm interested to see how they do it, kind of as an academic exercise, but not so much as a fan interest perspective. And again, for the same reason I don't watch any of the other net new MCUs unless they're on a streamer. I don't know any of these characters and kind of don't give a shit. Like, I kind of don't relate to any of these characters because I don't know any of them other than Blade. And, you know.
And that's the thing is that, like, I think I'm hoping one of two things. One, that they're trying to get back to kind of the mainstay characters because they've been reaching to, you know, the deep bench characters and trying, and sometimes it works. Like Guardians of the Galaxy were deep bench characters.
Yeah.
Nobody knew, you know, unless you're really into comic books like I am, you know, like the average person had no idea who the Guardians of the Galaxy were. And they kind of revitalized, and that was, what's his name? Anyway, it doesn't really matter, but that director,
James Gunn?
James Gunn, yeah. So that was James Gunn's genius that brought them and put them in it's actually one of my favorite Marvel franchises is that the Guardians of the Galaxy. They did such a good job of taking an obscure team and bringing it to the forefront. And that's what they thought they were going to capture that magic with all these other characters that they're just not doing. Yeah. Because of poor writing and poor executive decisions as to steering the franchises into more woke directions that people just don't care about. They want hero stories. It's not working out when they try to inject their kind of social politics into it. So they're flopping.
I mean, that's
because they're preaching.
Clearly happening with Lucasfilm right now. Like, I mean, yeah.
Anything Disney touches right now has to go in that direction. It's the prime directive. So, but I'm hoping that RDJ, it has enough acting and integrity, which it seems he does if you look at his career. And he's smart enough to read a good script and to sign on to this project going, okay, this isn't cheesy. This isn't stupid. This isn't bad writing. This isn't just a cash grab for me. He's smart enough to know that they're using him to revitalize a dying franchise. You know, so it would have to be a stellar script or a stellar story for him to sign on to it.
I mean, I hope so too. You know.
And that's what I'm hoping on. You know, I'm holding on to.
Or we're both wrong, and it's a big paycheck, and this is going to be comically bad, pun intended.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right. So, and that's kind of where I am. You know, Doom goes way, way back. I mean, I think 1962 was his origin. Yeah, in Fantastic Four #5 in 1962, you know, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. He's an OG character. Right out of the Silver Age. You know, and his name is Dr. Victor Werner von Doom. And he's kind of a you know, Germanic region, fake country of Latveria.
Yeah.
And he sits on a throne kind of king and has a giant lab and has robots for all of his sentries and takes care of him and all that. And he's constantly on like a god emperor kind of run of the world where he's always trying to do it. And he keeps getting slapped down by the Avengers or Fantastic Four. But he's genius level. He's a scientist and a monarch and has superpowers on top of everything else. Like, so he is a huge, huge character, and it would be really, really dumb of them, the Marvel Universe, to waste this villain that everybody's been waiting for in the MCU.
Yeah.
Because he's the heir apparent. You know, you can say that we could go down the route, and now that Thanos is kind of out of the way, there's a couple of big ones that people have kind of, you know, thrown around. Kang the Conqueror, who had a little bit of a, you know, until the actor got in trouble, I think that's who they had lined up for kind of the big bad of the next arc. But then really Annihilus, maybe, but nobody's ever heard of him. Doctor Doom has enough of the clout within not only the comic nerd kind of world, but outside of that, people have heard of him too. And he's already had movie appearances. So this is where they've got to put all of their chips on this villain. And if they're going to put all of their chips on this villain, it better be a damn good story. If you're putting RDJ as who played their best hero, is now going to play their best villain in the same universe. So how do you do that without really good writing? And I'm hoping that that's what it is. But the buzz is huge. I can't get away from it on social media. It is every other reel that I look at is that RDJ clip where he throws the hood up and then does the Iron Man, and
he's doing the Downey thing.
So we'll see.
I've got IGN up right now because I'm curious to see what's the upcoming slate, right? So Catherine Hahn's going to come back as Agatha Harkness, right? She's going to get a TV series September this year. March next year, Daredevil Born Again is a series.
At least they're bringing back Charlie, what's his name?
Yeah, Charlie Cox.
He was great in that. So they're bringing him back. I think they're bringing the whole cast back, which is wise. So because that was the best thing put out on Netflix in a long time. Show was rad.
Here's where things get weird. Captain America: Brave New World in 2025.
They had to change the name of that.
Did they really?
It was Captain America: New World Order, and they got so much pushback on it.
Yeah,
from people who are like, what, like, why would you name it that? And so they named it Brave New World, which isn't much different considering if you're, 1984 Brave New World kind of thing. But anyway. Yeah. But that's, I think, Giancarlo Anthony Mackie?
It is, and Giancarlo Esposito is going to be presumably, Sidewinder. So, like, that's cool because I like him as an actor a lot. Giancarlo Esposito is one of the guys, like, you just recently watched the that Guy Ritchie series I recommended to you. Now I can't remember the name of it.
The Gentleman? The
Gentleman. So he's the guy that's trying to buy the house from the main character the whole time. They're all debonair looking, kind of like Spanish almost looking dude with big glasses and all that, very well spoken, and he keeps trying to buy the house from or like buy his mansion or whatever, and then he ends up being like the main competitor throughout the end. That's Giancarlo Esposito.
Okay. So
Thunderbolts 2025, couldn't tell you at all what that's about, or I wouldn't. If you were to bet money on is this a comic or a regular movie, I would have said, sounds like an indie film. Can't wait to see it at cons.
Yeah.
Don't know what that is.
Thunderbolts is basically an anti-hero team. It is set up by Betsy Ross's dad, Thunderbolt Ross, who was the military guy who hates the Hulk. But he gets hit by radiation and he becomes Red Hulk.
Oh, who doesn't get hit by radiation in the MCU?
Right. So he becomes Red Hulk.
Okay, Red Hulk I'm aware of.
And then from there, he builds a team, and depending on the iteration of the team, it's always like people like Venom and a bunch of other kind of big, heavy hitters that he puts together, kind of a Suicide Squad, essentially. It's the answer to the Suicide Squad for Marvel. And to go after bad guys or go after good guys, just depending on who they're mad at the time and want to take down. Funded by the government.
Makes sense.
So it's a government funded, Suicide Squad type team, where they just, it's an ensemble cast of superheroes. Yeah.
So we have next July Fantastic Four First Steps. Okay. So there you go.
Are they giving us another Fantastic Four origin story? Because I don't think I can handle another one.
What we know. 2019 Comic-Con, Feige merely mentioned that ran out of time to discuss the Fantastic Four or mutants. While both concepts will eventually make their way to the MCU, we expected that integrating Marvel's first family would be the priority, and like many on the internet have suggested, they will debut in alternate 1960s, an elegant way to introduce them and acknowledge their absence in the Prime MCU for the entire time. In that context, they will also serve as great replacement for the similarly time-lost Steve Rogers. In December of 2020, Marvel announced Spider-Man Far From Home director John Watts would help helm the project, but then announced his departure in April of 2022, just a week or so shy of John Krasinski making a cameo as Reed Richards in the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness movie. Some expected him to direct the movie. The actor did not appear in the 2022 Comic-Con presentation, and Feige said little else about the film beyond its release date and place as the Phase 6 opener. At the subsequent D23 Expo, he confirmed WandaVision's Matt Shakman would direct the film. Shortly thereafter, Jeff Kaplan and Ian Springer signed on to write the script. In March of 2022, Avatar: The Way of the Water's Josh Friedman came aboard to write a new draft, and after years of speculation, Pedro Pascal emerged in November 2023 as the actor to play the cursed Richards. In February of 2024, Marvel confirmed Pascal will indeed be Mr. Fantastic, with Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Eben Mosk-Bachrach joining him as the rest of the team. Filming began at the end of July. Other cast members include Paul Walter Hauser, John Malkovich, Natasha Lyonne, and Julia Garner as the Silver Surfer. Additionally, Ralph Ineson will play Galactus, who fans at SDCC 2024 caught a glimpse of thanks to pre-filming sizzle reel that the cast brought with them from London. The reel also gave those in attendance a sneak peek at Pascal's voice for Reed in the fabulous Fantasticar, a piece of tech ripped straight from the comic that looks quite at home in the retro futuristic 1960s of the film. Also, Feige confirmed the film will be titled The Fantastic Four First Steps, and that Michael Giacchino will provide the score. And then it says Ironheart series,
Ugh.
Blade.
Okay, that one I'm okay with, but the Ironheart is stupid.
Can we do a bit of a spoiler? Because it was spoiled for me and I haven't even seen the movie. So in theaters now is Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah.
And my understanding from the internet is that there's a massive cameo by Wesley Snipes reprising Blade in that film somewhere.
I'm on board. I like it.
I'm really on board and really, really like that. Knowing that I'm going to fuck this name up, so I apologize. Mahershala Ali is supposed to be the new Blade. I think that's how you say his name.
Yeah.
That guy's awesome. And I thought to myself, like, okay, cool. If you're going to reprise Blade, yes, I would. I love this. That guy's, I think, an Oscar-winning actor, too. So I apologize. I fucked your name up. So anyway, that's coming. Then Avengers Doomsday in 2026. Wonder Man series, Avengers Secret Wars, Armor Wars.
Yeah.
There's some Shang-Chi 2 stuff. Another Spider-Man.
Shang-Chi should have been left on the shelf. He was this 70s exploitation
era
that they did. Yeah. I mean, so was Blade, to be honest, but Blade at least had some like coolness factor that they really, really polished, you know, back in 98 when that first came out. And in fact, everyone should attribute Marvel's success due to that Blade franchise. It was really what put it on the map. So, but I don't think Shang-Chi did I mean, even the comics weren't the same, but like Iron Man or Iron Fist and like Power Man and stuff like that, that was all during that 70s era where they were reaching out into like Kung Fu was really popular. And so were blaxploitation films and 70s kind of, you know, Sugar Bear and what's the pimp cop guy that, you know, they made movies, or not Shaq,
Shaft.
Shaft,
yeah.
Shaft, yeah.
Shaft,
so that whole era of movie, the whole era of that kind of 70s, they tried to inject into the comics world, and it had its day, but did not have legs to carry it through to the next generation because it was so niche to certain things. And to revitalize it is an odd thing to do in the movies unless you have a connection to that time frame.
Yeah.
So like Shang-Chi, or Chang-Chi, or however you pronounce it, because everybody pronounced it Shang-Chi the entire time it was a comic book until we got corrected in 2022 or whatever. But it was.
And in fairness, I have no idea.
Yeah, it was lost to time due to the fact that it had no social relevance today. And they tried to revitalize it. I mean, any generation's going to understand a vampire hunter. They're just going to understand it. But a supercharged kung fu guy that came from a 70s era book that had like 100 issues, they're just not going to understand it. That's what I'm talking about, the deep bench. And that's why those things flop, because it has a very small window of people going to go watch that.
Yeah, like the Eternals, and they had, like Angelina Jolie was in that. They had some actors in there, and like,
but nobody knew who the Eternals were.
I didn't know who the fuck the Eternals were. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you were a Jack Kirby fan from the 60s and 70s. That's where the Eternals were. Like the 70s is like when he was kind of trying to revitalize himself. And if you don't know who Jack Kirby is, you're not going to care about the Eternals.
Right.
And so most people don't know who Jack Kirby is. They don't know what the Eternals were, what a Celestial is. You know, like unless you're super, super deep in comic book knowledge, you don't know this stuff.
Right, and you're kind of thinking to yourself,
and so to try to polish it up in modern,
like you're thinking to yourself, like, where were these guys for the Thanos fight then, right?
Yeah,
I mean that would have been more
why
of
did they
a
come down and whoop some ass.
That would have been way more. Yeah, I'm with you. It doesn't resonate because I mean maybe it's.
I just think that they tried to push too much too fast. You could have found ways to bring the Eternals in and it not feel awkwardly forced. You could have done that with all of the newer franchises, all the new characters that you're just trying to jam in there just for the buck, instead of being natural about it. And go, okay.
Totally.
Like,
they were printing money there for a while and could do no wrong. And so they just kept shifting gears, not knowing if they should do that. They just kept doing it. So,
yeah. And so now you got a bunch of characters nobody cares about. And because of copyright issues, they couldn't use a lot of the characters. Like they just got Namor back, and I think that they wasted Namor, who was the first Marvel character in a Black Panther series. They should have waited until they brought the Fantastic Four out. He was actually fighting the Fantastic Four. I mean, he's a hero, but he's an anti-hero. Like he doesn't care about humans, he cares about Atlantis. And they took him out of Atlantis and put him in some like Aztec underwater city to make him more woke. But it was I've never seen the second Black Panther because I just didn't care enough to. But from what I understand is that they were straight up calling like something. Oh, they were calling him a wetback in the movie.
Really?
Yeah, because they had to dry off his back to take away his Mexican special powers.
So like that actually occurred in a Disney released film, the second Black Panther? Seriously? I didn't watch it either, so.
Yeah, but apparently in order to take him down, they had to dry off his back.
Yeah, that's kind of gross.
Yeah, so like it was absurd, but they ruined the character, so now he's ruined.
Yeah.
But like fast forward to the Fantastic Four, like what are they going to do? You know, they were also in Sony limbo.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
much like
where
a lot of
most
the
of that
others.
died, right? For a long time.
Fox limbo. There's Fox limbo because that's where the X-Men were. That's why they haven't been able to use the word mutant at all.
Right.
But now Disney owns all of that, so they're now going, okay, how do we inject all of these main big characters, X-Men, Fantastic Four, stuff that we hadn't been able to use up until this point? How do we do that?
Well,
and, I mean, Spider-Man was a huge hit because they struck a deal where they could actually bring him over from Sony.
Right.
And that was a big deal.
Because Sony had Spider-Man and Fox had X-Men, right?
X-Men and Fantastic Four.
And Fantastic Four. Yeah, and you know, to their credit, I mean, some of the X-Men movies were not super enjoyable, but I thought the casting was really, really good in all of those movies. So it'd be interesting if Marvel tries to reboot all that, who they're going to try and find that would fill the shoes, especially Wolverine. So
the X-Men movies were a chronological mess
Yeah.
that you had to ignore to enjoy them, because they jumped decade to decade. They had characters that were different in this decade and then played by a different actor 2 decades before that made no connection at all.
Yep.
And you just had to kind of ignore it in order to enjoy them, you know. And then they're using characters that cross over into the MCU that you can't really do, like Quicksilver. You know, Quicksilver was an Avenger first, but he was a mutant.
Mhm.
You know, back in 1963, he was actually part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and then got bumped over to the Avengers. You know, so like before he was ever on the X-Men, he was actually an Avenger first and a mainstay in the Avengers. And so you had your Avengers Quicksilver, and then you had your
X-Men one.
yeah. So it's one of those things where there's too much messiness to care anymore. And I think there's fatigue built around that. People are like trying to untangle that ball, and they just can't do it. But I am curious and they realize that the mess that they're in now. So RDJ to the rescue again. He's going to fly in on his Doctor Doom with his Doctor Doom cape and save the MCU. And that's
They hope.
Hopefully they hope. And hopefully they keep all of the shitty writers that they've been hiring as, you know, DEI hires to make sure that the wokeness gets in there. They get rid of all of them and just get good writers and just go, you know, the source material. You read these books. You understand it. You're good writers. Give us a good story. Tie it in as cleanly as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Tie up any, you know, and I mean, the best we're going to get out of this Fantastic Four or Doctor Doom's reprisal of any kind with RDJ coming back, the best we're going to get out of it is the last of the Star Wars franchise, where it wasn't a bad movie if they didn't have to spend an hour cleaning up the Last Jedi before it.
Yeah.
Like The Rise of Skywalker could have been a great movie, and it could have arced the entire 9-episode series and made it an epic saga of the Skywalkers and the Palpatines all the way to the end, and then it brought it all the way through.
Yeah,
and it would have been a beautiful space saga. However, that Last Jedi screwed everything up so much because of bad writing that the next movie took half the movie to fix, at least it put band-aids on what that last movie was.
Yeah, I wasn't going to dredge up super big comparisons to Lucasfilm after shitting on it less than a month ago with the Acolyte series, but I'm at the point now where I would appreciate it if Disney sold Lucasfilm to someone else. Like,
please.
I don't know who's going to clean up that fucking mess, but it was unwatchable past the third episode of how hard they had completely destroyed not just your faith in the franchise as you knew it from a fan's perspective, but the entirety of the Skywalker saga, like completely invalidated. And I was like, all right, I'm out. So anyway, we'll see where this goes. Like I'm excited to watch Robert Downey Jr. on the screen for something, but not for this.
Yeah.
So
I had a lot of other people, there was a lot of other people pitched as somebody who could play, like even Cillian Murphy would have been a great Doctor Doom. Like there was a lot of people that could have been thrown underneath that helmet with the bright blue eyes underneath those, open slats, like who had the acting chops, who have played villains wonderfully in the past. Like there was a lot of people that people were throwing around that could have played this role just fine. The only reason you're throwing RDJ in there, you're going to have to write yourself out of a weird box. And on top of that, you're only doing it for the cash grab of his name recognition and bringing the revitalization back to something you royally screwed up for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And coming off of is probably the most recognizable franchise in outside of Star Wars in history. Like, you go off those Avengers movies that the entire MCU built up to, that it's untouchable. That was in a franchise not only monetarily that is untouchable, but also just story arc wise. They did an excellent job. And then after that last Avengers movie, it all went sideways because they were trying to reimagine the magic,
Right.
like, and instead of just continuing on with the solid plan, they're like, okay, now that we've got everybody in here, we're going to start twisting some screws and see what happens. And they did a bad job, and they screwed it up. And so,
Yeah, I mean, I appreciated the ambitious level of the entirety of the arc leading to, you know, Infinity War and Endgame and stuff.
Right.
Didn't think it would work, transparently. And I thought it took way too much time. Like, for my money, we could have cut 2 or 3 standalone movies out of that first block to get to the end game, and just, or put 2 or 3 of those movies into one movie and just sped things along a little bit. But I'm also an impatient ass because they did tell a really good story and the gamble paid off. It just took them, whatever it was, 13, 15 years to do it. So I think the first Iron Man came out in 2008, if I remember right.
it did.
So
It did.
anyway, RDJ, Doctor Doom, it's coming. A lot of people saw it. A lot of people saw the unmasking.
Yeah. Yeah, the crowd cheered very, very loudly for that. And I was kind of scratching my head, confused, going, what does this mean? Like, how, you know, and I think a lot of the comic purists are probably going to be in the same boat that I am. They're like, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
You know, but, and it sucks to put that kind of shadow of a doubt on RDJ, but like, when you're close to the source material, you're like, this doesn't logically make sense. Like,
Right.
sure, I would like RDJ in just about anything, but this particular role throws a big wrench in the storyline that is only going to be explained away by multiverse magic.
Right.
And that's it. And so, and you kind of feel let down about that. Like, it's a big role that could have gone to somebody that really could have done something with it. And I'm not saying he won't, but in order to get us there, we're going to have to skip over some logic. And I think it's a bit of a letdown for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think it's, this might get pulled off, so I could stand corrected, but I think it's just,
Me too.
I think it's just thin that you have to leverage multiverse magic to get out of better storytelling. So.
Yeah, same here. I mean, we could be looking at a Heath Ledger moment again, you know, and where we were, the entirety of the world was wrong about Heath Ledger's ability to play Joker, because I was like, whatever, this is going to be so lame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the Knight's Tale guy? No fucking way. That's not going to work at all. So
I was like, 10 things I hate about you, Heartthrob?
Right.
Like, what?
I shouldn't be doubting Nolan and his ability to turn crazy shit into really entertaining shit. But I doubted. So
yeah, I did too. I'll admit it. So this could be that same kind of concept where we're just all, you know, we were fixated in a particular way, and when we get thrown something that's kind of a curveball, and we're all curmudgeons about it. We're like, no, this doesn't make sense. I don't like it. And then it turns out great. But
yeah, and I know where we'll turn the podcast to next. We'll probably hammer through some of those just for time and dry content factor. But since we're still on this topic, like, did you have a front runner you would have cast as Doctor Doom? Like, if you were in charge of the MCU, like, who would you have thrown the keys to Doctor Doom?
To be honest, I hadn't put a whole lot of thought into it. Like, it wasn't on my radar because I had pretty much checked out of the MCU.
Yeah.
So I just didn't put a whole lot of thought. If I was to think about it, I mean, Cillian Murphy would have been great. But I'm trying to think of somebody else that kind of fits the bill. And I can't remember his name, but he was in Game of Thrones. He played the Lannister brother who was banging his sister.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that
he
guy
played
would have been
Jamie
a great
Lannister.
pick.
That would have been
Lannister,
cool.
yeah. Yeah, he would have been a good pick for that. There's a couple of other people that kind of were queued up to
Yeah.
kind of and probably pitched the idea at some point, and the studio decided to go,
Thank you for not saying Adam Driver or Timothy Chalamet. I appreciate that.
no, yeah, they can both drive off a cliff together holding hands in a Thelma and Louise situation, as far as I'm concerned. If they put that little Chalamet kid in another damn movie, like we were just talking about him
He's
last night,
supposed
my
to be
daughter
the
and I.
next It. He's like the next It actor,
Well, he's
I
in
guess.
everything.
Yeah, he's in everything.
Everything, and sure, he was. I didn't mind him as Paul Atreides in the Dune movies.
Yeah.
He was great in those. But it's kind of an easy character, and he kind of fit the bill. But the rest of it was, he's too much and everywhere, and that's something
Burning Out,
I get.
similar to
He's-
the Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, I've had a little too much Pedro Pascal. Like
Yeah.
the fact that they're making him, they should have stuck with John Krasinski. I had him picked 3 years before the Doctor Strange
Yeah.
movie came out where he did his cameo as Reed Richards. He was my pick 3 years prior, and I wanted Emily Blunt, his wife, to play Sue Storm. I thought it would have been a perfect casting. They've worked together in the past. She looks the part. You throw a little blonde in her hair, and she's exactly what Sue Storm needs to be. He's exactly what Reed Richards needs to be. And for some reason, some idiot at the studios went, you know what? You know who's really hot right now? You know who's in every single thing right now? Pedro Pascal. Let's put him at Reed Richards, and it kills me. I have absolute burnout on Pedro Pascal.
Do you
And I'm
think
just
if you
we
replace
need a break.
Pedro Pascal in everything he's ever done with Javier Bardem, is it a better movie?
Not necessarily. Like
With the exception of maybe The Mandalorian.
well, anybody could have played the Mandalorian.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, yeah,
Like he had
that's
one
the thing.
emotional scene that I was like, okay, that was really good acting. And I
Yeah.
think anybody, because you're under a fucking helmet the whole time. But
Right?
yeah, Javier Bardem's awesome. I like him a
Yeah,
lot.
he's great. He's great. I fully agree with you on that. I was just thinking of him in like The Last of Us. That
Yeah, I think
Pedro,
Javier
and I was-
Bardem would have killed that too. Like he was in a
Most
movie
people-
called Vicky Cristina Barcelona Friend Group, some bullshit, as like the hot foreign guy or whatever, kind of like a weird Scarlett Johansson art film, coming of age weird movie. He did great in that. I could see he has a lot more range than just No Country for Old Men, where he's like terrifying, kind of.
Right.
Or James Bond villainry, but he's
He was
good.
also in the Dune. He was actually the comic relief in Dune.
Yeah, he was. Yep,
Yeah. So he was funny in that. So
he's
but,
good.
Yeah, he's got good range.
All
I
right.
like him.
Well, we'll try to think up some better Doctor Doom fits for next week, maybe, or not.
Yeah.
We'll see. So let's turn our attention to the White House real quick. Some news came out yesterday about, and it's on the fact sheet at whitehouse.gov right now in the press room. Joe Biden is reforming or promising to reform the U.S. Supreme Court. That's definitely not court packing. That's not another way of saying court packing. Just
Right.
wink, wink.
It's a flailing last ditch effort.
Yeah. This is their public statement real quick. In recent years, the Supreme Court has overturned long-established legal precedents protecting fundamental rights. This court has gutted civil rights protections, taken away a woman's right to choose, and now
It
granted
hasn't.
presidents broad immunity from prosecution for crimes they commit in office. Pretty sure
No, it
that wasn't a
hasn't.
right. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's still kind of a state level decision. But anyway,
Right.
at the same time, recent ethics scandals involving some justices have caused the public to question the fairness and independence that are essential for the court to faithfully carry out its mission to deliver justice for all Americans. Kind of not sure that's accurate either. President Biden believes that no one, neither the president or the Supreme Court, is above the law.
Is above the law. Yep, I had a feeling that was coming.
In the face of this crisis of confidence,
Says the man who's lived his life above the law. Yeah. Okay.
In the face of this crisis of confidence in America's democratic institutions, President Biden is calling for 3 bold reforms to restore trust and accountability. First being no immunity for crimes a former president committed in office. Wonder if that's going to be leading into some other stuff they're going to try and throw up. The second will be term limits for Supreme Court justices, because I'm not even going to read the first one. Congress approved term limits for their presidency over 75 years ago, and President Biden believes they should do the same for the Supreme Court. Blah, blah, blah. And then binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. And then President Biden and Vice President Harris look forward to working with the Congress and empowering the American people to prevent the abuse of presidential power, restore faith in the Supreme Court, and strengthen the guardrails of democracy. President Biden thanks the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court of the United States for its insightful analysis of the Supreme Court reform proposals. The administration will continue work to ensure that no one is above the law, and in America, the people rule.
Yeah, that sounds so nice and completely false from top to bottom.
Yeah, let's put all the ethics scandals on the table then, President Biden, if you're interested in having a dick measuring contest on our...
That is a door I think he might not want to open.
Probably not, right?
Yeah, both for him and all of his pals that are still alive, such as Mr. Clinton and Mr. Obama and quite a few others. I mean, hell, throw the Bushes in there. Throw all, like, there isn't a single president who's going to be sitting there going, this is a good idea. Like, he's probably going to get pushback from his buddies with phone calls going, what are you doing? Like, this isn't a good thing for us.
His response might be, I don't think I'll live to see my own trial, so fuck them.
Right. That's
some men just want to watch the world burn. Like, here's the one part of this that I'm not sure how I feel about, because I might on surface agree with it. I like term limits for everybody.
I do.
Everybody in every institution, judicial, executive. Like, I need to look into, obviously I know why they're proposing this. I get it.
Right.
But like in the larger context of term limits, I'm mostly a fan of that. I'll have to take a look at who else has tried and failed, because one of the most fun things I think an American can watch is pop some popcorn, throw on YouTube at some random CNBC3 channel where you get to watch the Senate hearings where they're trying to confirm potential appointees to the Supreme Court, and like watch the Senate just rip apart their history and due diligence while vetting them in front of God and country. It's great entertainment.
Here's the reason why there's a difference between term limits between senators and Congress and the Supreme Court. Senators and Congress, Congress writes laws. They create law. They pass law.
I get the differences. The Supreme
Court, judicial system, they interpret the law. So they're not making law.
Agreed.
Right. And so that type of wisdom, and the fact that the founding fathers even saw that this is a seat that, if rotated too much, would be damaging to the country in such a way that generation to generation wouldn't know what up
the law,
from down was.
Right, what the law means based on ideology and political hacking does.
Because if you have a rotating door in there, and every couple of years you got a new group of people, it is literally going to be too hard to keep track of the foundational law of this country.
I agree. And so, if the term limits are longer, I guess I would have to really think about it, because just in general, I'm more of a term limits fan. That said,
for Congress and stuff, because
it's easy for me to say when I'm on the right side of the Supreme Court majority at this point.
Right. And that's basically what this is. This is a temper tantrum from people that that the law is not being interpreted for them to get away with stuff. And they're throwing a temper tantrum. Mm-hmm. And so basically the law is like, let's take, they said it is removing rights. We know what they mean by that. They mean abortion. And so basically the abortion rights are getting the Roe v. Wade was taken down because there is no federal right to abortion.
Oh, that's not in the Constitution?
It is not in the Constitution.
Oh my God.
So
Oh,
therefore,
man.
what that does is that delegates it to which amendment? The 10th Amendment.
Sure does.
If it's not in the Constitution, it's not a federal law, it's not a federal right, then what it does is it delegates it to the states via the 10th Amendment. And so that's what they decided. They didn't strip anybody of their rights. They literally said, we don't have the right to tell you what to do.
We're kicking that back to the state level, which is kind of what I said at the top. Yeah.
Yeah, where it belongs. So all of it is built. This whole argument is built off of fallacies, bad interpretations of fallacies. In fact, so just to get the clips to put out to the dumb public that doesn't know any better, it doesn't understand how the law works, doesn't understand that they're not working outside of the law to create law. They're literally interpreting it properly and in the right context. It just hasn't been done in a long time because people were writing law from the bench, such as Ruth Bader Ginsburg and a bunch of other people who were doing that from the bench. They were creating law instead of interpreting it properly. They were like, oh no, let's make it so that there is a federal Roe v. Wade Act. That's not within the context of what they should be doing. They should have looked at it and went, we have nothing to do with this. This is a state's issue.
That's what would be called a federal overreach.
Right. And that's what they were doing. And so the Supreme Court is acting within, and in fact, we do have a couple of activists who don't understand law. Sotomayor is insane. Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Yep.
She doesn't even know what a woman is, let alone what how to interpret the law. If you've read any of her opinions after any of the decisions that have been made lately, they don't even make sense.
She made it to my runner-up gag board on when we did the cabinet draft. Actually.
Yeah.
Ketanji Brown Jackson. Yeah,
and
like
you've got actual moderates in there. Roberts is not a conservative, and
I don't think Amy Coney Barrett is either.
No, so you've got moderates. You basically have two people on. You've got the ones that everyone's mad at: Judge Alito or Justice Alito and Justice Clarence Thomas. Yeah, those two are the ones that everyone's mad at. But they're also the ones that understand the law the best. They're the ones who actually come down with the best opinions and the most concise opinions, and the ones that go, this isn't me, this is the law.
Yeah, if you read the context around the rulings, because they publish them, it's actually a very, very well thought out and interestingly justified reason as to why they come up with the decisions they come up with. It just doesn't make headline news. I think,
the headline news is the Supreme Court said you can't have an abortion anymore, which is patently untrue. And so it's just not federally protected, which it should never have been. Which the ATF shouldn't be a thing either. So these are things that your federal government is doing that is outside of the context of their
it's way out of their purview. Way
out of their purview. It's something that we've just accepted as a society. It's something that they should never have done. And that's just scraping the surface. The fact that nature is correcting itself in this regard over the course of the last, 5-6 years is jarring to people who've lived under the idea that all of these things naturally should just be because we want them to be. And when you realize, nope, that's actually not how the justice system works, and it's not how the Supreme Court works. Once you realize that, then you go, oh, okay, I just don't like it. And that's where you end up once the logical, 100%. So, and that's it. Like, you can not like it, but that's the reality of it. And
I think the rest of it, though, just as far as hot takes are concerned, is complete horseshit.
Yeah.
Everything else in that fact sheet coming out of the White House was horseshit.
It's a desperate swing because, he's not going to get to pick, this administration isn't going to get to pick a Supreme Court justice. Like, there's just no one dropping out anytime soon. And so they can't even the playing field. So it's either reform it to a point where it's no longer an equal branch of government, which it needs to be with congressional and or legislative and executive. Judicial needs to be on equal playing field. And what they're trying to do is handcuff it and cobble it right now in order so that they can just run over the top of it with whatever hopeful Congress that they can get to write laws and just just run over the Supreme Court.
At some point, they're going to rubber stamp Constitution. They're going to rubber stamp stuff that will wind up being constitutional amendments that will then be backed up by the Supreme Court.
Right.
That's on a long enough timeline. That's exactly what would happen on both sides of the party if that was to be the case, or both parties rather. So
and stacking it isn't going to make it any better either. That's their other trick. Is like let's put 2 more justices up there, and you're like, well, then why not 11? Then why not 13? Why are we stopping at, because you don't have the upper hand right now, you're very upset, so you want more. It's the same thing we dealt with here in Coeur d'Alene, in Kootenai County, actually, a couple years back. The Democrats here were really upset that our county commissioners, there's only 3. We have 3 county commissioners. And in all of the state of Idaho, including Ada County and Canyon County and all the bigger counties than Kootenai County, there's no more than 3 county commissioners, and they run just fine off of 3. However, when you don't like the 3 because they're too conservative for you, and in fact, it came right after an election where they lost kind of the balance there. Then all of a sudden they came up with this idea for optional forms of government meetings where they were looking at putting on the ballot, bumping it up to 5 commissioners and then a city manager. And in the back channels that we FOIA'd, it turned out that the reason they wanted to do that, and they were dumb enough to email each other about it, and we found the emails, was that they wanted to stack it with their buddies and make sure that they could steer the direction of the county into a way that it would be far more liberal and far more open to outside developers coming in and swooping in like locusts and destroying the prairie and all the lands. And then they didn't like the way that the sheriff was handling the COVID situation, because he wasn't going to fine anybody for he wasn't going to violate anybody's rights. And so they were like, no, you have to do it. And he's like, nope, not doing any of that. So they're like, okay, he's a problem. So what we're going to do is take all of the elected officials, such as the sheriff, the coroner, the prosecutor, the clerk, the assessor, all of the sitting, county officials. And instead of having them elected, let's just appoint them.
That's a great idea.
Right. And so that's what they were trying to do. And it went for 11 months of meetings every Wednesday. And my wife went to every single one of them and filled that room full of people who were just like, you're trying to take away our right to vote for our sheriff? You're insane. That's not going to happen. And they're like, it might. And they stacked the committee of 9 people with 6 people that were already on board. They were like, we have our marching orders. We have to push this through and get it on the ballot. And we fought and fought. We changed 2 of their minds. We got rid of one of the other people because we found out she wasn't living in the area and she can't be on the board. And so they had to replace her, and her replacement was actually in agreement with us. And at the 11th hour, the last day, we got a whole bunch of pushback from the committee members that were great, and pushed back on them and said, guess what? We're not doing this, and crushed it right then and there. It never went to the ballot. It's a huge win for the county. And man, they were pissed, and they've been coming after us ever since because of that, because they lost this huge thing that would have taken basically the same power as like what's going on in the Supreme Court right now.
Right.
And that's what they do. If they don't get their way, they stack the deck. And that's what they want. They want to stack the deck in order to push evil through the country, push evil on to every single state and every single person within the reach of the long fingers of the federal government. And
and I should clarify my position, because if you listen to me enough, you'll realize what I said might be a little contradictory. I'm in favor of looking at term limits everywhere. I am not in favor of anything that has to deal with a constitutional amendment. And so because
Agreed.
that would have to be changed in order to pass any of this, it's kind of a zero-sum starter for me. But
Okay.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm not advocating for any reason. This looking right at you, Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't like changes to the United States Constitution.
No.
You're a nice guy, but when you start
I don't-
noodling around with that document, you're off the table for me. So
We often talk in our groups about, because they want to play around with the idea of a convention of states. And I'm wholeheartedly against it.
Yeah.
And people are like, yeah, but what about term limits? We can get term limits. It's like, at what cost? Do you think that
Right.
we have the moral fiber within the federal government or even state governments right now that would be representing for that delegation for a constitution,
even if you
Yeah.
did, would that fiber hold up over generations?
No.
Right.
Well, when you have a convention of states, you have delegates that get sent there.
Mhm.
We do not have the fiber of men or women right now who we're going to come out of that with more rights than less rights.
Correct.
They will open arms, invite it, and go, fine, let's work some stuff out. Let's put some new amendments on the board. But what's gonna end up happening is we're gonna lose so much more than we'll gain that it will be a net loss. It will be absolutely sure. We may get term limits, maybe, but we're gonna definitely get some constrictions on the Second Amendment. We're definitely gonna get some constrictions on the First Amendment. There's gonna be compromise that's gonna end up, in order for deals to be made within that convention of states, you're going to lose rights. You're
Exactly.
going to lose God-given rights. So right now, I don't think we have the moral fabric as a nation, as a people, in order to put that into place.
Like, I don't have my notes from when that was brought up on the pod, but you had asked
Right.
me without any background context on it, and I did do a lot of homework on it because I was intrigued with the idea and ultimately came to this is not a good idea, in my opinion. And for that, the long reach of how that impacts the economy, there's a million different factors that on a long enough timeline, this is probably not the best idea. Even if it's a short-term gain, if it came with required term limits for certain positions, to your point, at what cost is sort of the other half of that question. So,
right. Because, I mean, let's say we did it, and like at this point, I think we don't even know how to fix what we got, let alone create new stuff. I don't think this is a fix. A lot of people think it's a fix, and it tends to be pretty popular in kind of boomer circles, the older generation that still was the reach across the aisle generation, that think that there's negotiating power within the structure of the dual party system. I think that chasm has spread so far that it's unreachable now. We cannot reach across the aisle anymore. There was a time, probably even up into the late 90s, that was still probably possible. But I think that has spread so far that the ideologues and the ideologies, even the basic ones on both sides of the aisle, are so far apart that there is no middle ground. So you're not going to come to a compromise without having to give over massive losses.
right.
On both sides, but I highly doubt they're going to, because the conservative side of things tends to be the more by the rules kind of group. Like, we always want to do everything by the rules, and the other side, it's by any means necessary.
Right.
And they live by that creed, and they're okay with it. So they're not going to give anything up, but they're going to take everything, and we're going to give everything in good faith and lose all of our rights. And so I don't see it as a net positive. I see it as a wishful thinking of things of the past, that it could have happened if we had thought about it in 2004. Yeah, or maybe, let's say pre-2001.
I was going to say pre-2001 because the cost of civil liberties,
the Patriot Act,
in the face of being sold a bill of goods around security, that remains my largest conflict with the Republican Party to this day.
Agreed.
Like, to me, that was a massive violation of civil liberties and rights. 100%.
Yeah, they sold us up the river and have yet to apologize for it. In fact, they're like, we thought we were doing the right thing. No, you didn't.
Nope.
You didn't think that.
You wanted a license to have a lot of black dollars off the books spent on black projects off the books that had an unparalleled, devastating effect on human security, especially digital.
Yeah,
but
and
human security in this country and around the world, and it was abhorrent.
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
no, and that's where people are like, there is no moderate. Okay, in practice, you're probably right these days. In principle, I still consider myself a conservative moderate to that degree, and that's usually the example I cite. I'm like, look, I'm pissed at the Republicans too. This is a prime example. Yeah. So
yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, hey, so Venezuela, right? Some shit's going on there.
Oh man.
What happened?
Yeah.
What happened? Because
Well-
I want to talk about their elected quote unquote leader, but lead us through what's going on in Venezuela. What happened?
So Venezuela is going through some elections right now. Let me pull up because remember, folks, I lost all my stuff that I had up.
And when he gets his stuff back, I have to step away from the camera for a minute, so you're gonna have to carry the pod for like
Not a
just a
problem.
minute while you do.
So let's go to.
Election shenanigans, Venezuela.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna go to which one did I end? All right, so we've had some elections going on over in Venezuela, and basically it has become extremely violent because it did not come out the way that a lot of Venezuelan people thought it should. And President Nicolas Maduro, who is the current essentially dictator, I mean, at this point, any elections are kind of, you know, they put him up for the sake of it, for the narrative, like, oh yeah, look, we're all elected. But Maduro's been a heavy dictator. He's you know, in the vein of Chavez, and there has been a people's advocate, basically, you know, a populist leader, much like they did in Argentina and a couple of other places where this is kind of spreading. And his name was Edmundo Gonzalez, and he was running against him. And a lot of the people think that there was widespread irregularities in the voting, that they cheated, and then Maduro came out and just announced that he won, regardless of what the results came out to be. And it has led into massive protests, huge. And people are getting killed by Maduro's men. They are swooping them up as much as possible, but like there's a ton of massive protests, thousands and thousands and thousands of people just hitting the streets. And so there's a lot of stories going on within that, but they're kind of keeping it, the media is kind of keeping a wrap on it. There's some stories going on, but Maduro is about to have a full-on revolution, that, and if it hasn't already started by now, I only see it going in that direction.
It's wild. Can I give you a couple paragraphs from Wikipedia? So take it with a grain of salt on the Nicolas Maduro guy here.
Sure.
Nicolas.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
All right.
Yeah, a little history on the man, because, you know, you kind of hear of Maduro, you hear of, you know, these kind of South American dictators that have come in off of cartels and such, that are kind of running countries in communist fashions under the thin veneer and guise of a democratic kind of socialism. But really they just do that for the show, and so that's what I was explaining. But I want to know some
quick side
history
note too, like going to Mexico real fast. While you were here, I was reading you that breaking story about the cartel leaders that were essentially, we'll cover it next pod because it's a fun story, but essentially we captured two very prominent Sinaloa cartel members in the United States. That's super exciting. But let's get back to Nicolas Maduro.
We watched Sicario.
Yeah, the day after we watched Sicario, by the way. Which
which I had never seen. It was
like
awesome.
Providence timing.
I know.
Yeah, I was like, no, this movie's badass. You'd probably like it. It's, you know, and I'm I can't remember his name now. Fuck, mind melting.
Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, I'm a huge Del Toro fan. Josh Brolin, he's in it. He's great. It's great.
Yeah, it was a great movie. But yeah, anyway, it bleeds into this. But yeah, go ahead with the Maduro background.
Yeah. I totally should have sponsored that in the pre-show as a story. I didn't get the notes together. So Nicolas Maduro, right, beginning his working life as a bus driver, Maduro rose to become a trade union leader before being elected to the National Assembly in the year 2000. He was appointed to a number of positions under President Hugo Chavez, serving as president of the National Assembly from 05 to 06, as Minister of Foreign Affairs from 06 to 13, and as the vice president from 2012 to 2013 under Chavez. After Chavez's death was announced on March 5, 2013, Maduro assumed the presidency. A special presidential election was held in 2013 where Maduro was declared the winner with a 50.62% of the vote. So pretty close. As the United Socialist
in there.
Yeah, as the United Socialist Party of Venezuela candidate. He has ruled Venezuela by decree since 2015 through the powers granted to him by the ruling party legislature. Shortages in Venezuela and decreased living standards led to a wave of protests in 2014 that escalated into daily marches nationwide. Repression of dissent and a decline in Maduro's popularity. An opposition-led National Assembly was elected in 2015, and a movement toward recalling Maduro began in 2016, which was ultimately canceled by Maduro's government. Maduro maintained power through the Supreme Tribunal, the National Electoral Council, and the military. The Supreme Tribunal removed power from the elected National Assembly, resulting in a constitutional crisis, and another wave of protests began in 2017. As a response to the protest, Maduro called for a rewrite of the Constitution, and the Constituent Assembly of Venezuela was elected in 2017. Right then and there.
Which is why we have a Supreme Court.
So
Appointed, not elected, I might add.
Right.
Under voting conditions that may concluded were irregular. On 20 May 2018, presidential elections were held. President Maduro was sworn in on 10 January 2019 with widespread condemnation, and the president of the National Assembly, Juan Guaido, was declared interim president on 23 January 2019 by the opposition legislative party, kicking off a then presidential crisis that spanned nearly 4 years and divided the international community. Maduro has been described as an autocrat and a dictator by some Western authors. Between 2013 and 2023, Venezuela dropped 42 places in the Press Freedom Index. According to escalations by the United Nations and Human Rights Watch, under Maduro's administration, more than 20,000 people have been subject to extrajudicial killings, and 7 million Venezuelans have been forced to flee the country. The UN fact-finding mission on Venezuela concluded that the country's justice system independence had been deeply eroded. The mission also identified frequent due process violations, including political external interference and the admission of evidence through torture. Most Venezuelan television channels are controlled by the state, and information unfavorable to the government is not covered in its entirety. In 2018, a board of independent experts designated by the Organization of American States alleged that crimes against humanity have been committed in Venezuela during Maduro's presidency. In 2021, the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court announced the opening of an investigation regarding the situation in the country at large. So things have not been smooth sailing from a guy that just won't let go of his power. Kamala Harris. What?
Yeah, right. So just off the,
That's wild. And that's Wikipedia, right? So grain of salt here. I could have wrote that also, myself. So
a lot of this is coming from the UN and stuff that, which typically I'm like, well, if the UN thinks you're bad, then you're probably good. But no, I don't think so in this case. I think that
well, the investigative bodies that are producing evidence toward the reasons they were appointed to investigate this stuff is what I'm more concerned with, rather than the body that sent them that way.
Right, exactly.
Kind of. Depends on where the money and the interests are, but that's a ton of shit.
Yeah.
Like,
that's hard to get around. That's not one or two things.
No, that's not. That is a political lifetime of a death grip.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yep. And so what's going to end up happening is two things. If he holds on to this, expect another giant flood at our border, because that's where they'll go.
Yeah.
So we will have a massive multi-million refugee push towards our borders. So then on top of that, also, do you not see certain things beginning to manifest that are mirroring what is going on in this particular situation here within our borders? We may not be that extreme yet, and may not be decades down the road of like ongoing, strife and conflict, but the ingredients are there. The ingredients are there for us to be hanging our tippy toes over the edge of what looks like this situation, and if we're not careful, and I don't think we're careful. I think that a lot of people are very uncareful intentionally, and I think that this should be something that a lot more people should be paying attention to.
I think so too. Venezuela was in the top 10. I don't recall where, but they were like in the top 10 of natural resources to GDP conversion there for a while worldwide. Yeah. Like this is not a country that couldn't be highly profitable and self-sustaining and democracy first, which I think it's clever that even in Wikipedia, they don't spend a whole lot of time naming what the other opposition party stands for. Could also not be a democratic process that they're advocating for. So I'll give the devil his due for a moment. But nevertheless, like if we're working with a dictatorship to this degree, maybe the alternative might have some bright ideas. And it sounds to me like that's kind of what the people en masse have been advocating and protesting for since 2014, just with various hot button points to go back out and protest. That's pretty radical. But you raise an interesting point right here in the States. There are enough ingredients where that could start to kick off here.
Yeah.
Very much.
I think we have all of the ingredients for that type of level of social unrest. And if things line up properly and you mix it all together just right, come November, we could have something looking very similar. The difference is that we're a far more mixed group of people than Venezuela is, obviously, and also we're armed. We have the Second Amendment, and it's going to be a very, very vastly different type of protesting on a grand scale. We're also, like 3 times the size of Venezuela or more in population and land mass. I can't remember exactly how big Venezuela is, but it's big enough. We may be even bigger than that, but I can't imagine us. We currently have somebody who's a dictator who's trying to change laws. We currently have somebody who's trying to, like the installation of Kamala Harris right now, the fact that not one person voted for her.
Venezuela looks the same size or slightly larger than Texas State, maybe.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, yeah. But yeah, the fact that they are subverting democracy entirely, and I don't even, believe in democracy. I'm a constitutional, republic believer, but if we're using the word democracy for the sake of not communist or socialist, let's go there. But if we're looking at it from that way, they've subverted democracy entirely to install somebody that they're going to try to push in with possibly fake elections, because otherwise, popularity-wise, there's no way she's going to get in. If she gets in and everyone's like, the math doesn't math, we have the elements of what's going on right now in Venezuela.
And I'll have to go back to my board approved safety board. How many days since last peaceful protest by supporters of the Conservative Party? Well, it turns out there haven't been any, so it's still been 0 days since our last uprising, so to speak.
Since they shot,
since peaceful protest, I mean.
Right. But I mean, even after they shot their the head of their party.
I think
You know?
if that bullet was an inch or so off course, that may have been different.
Yeah, agreed.
That's how polarized I think we've become.
100%. I think that the fact that he turned his head at the last second,
Yeah.
and even now the FBI under congressional hearings is admitting to that.
Yeah.
Um,
And look,
yeah,
I'm honestly a massive fan of protesting.
yeah.
I think
it's
its
a
concept
fundamental constitutional right.
and delivery are both excellent. What I am not a fan of is crime.
Yes.
And so I think there's a way in which we could do that. Now, all of you listening are like, we know you're an old man and things make sense to you like they should be since 1950. That's the American political system. This is not a... You're probably right. Like, I'm a bit of a traditionalist in that respect, and, you know, defended the
I don't
fact
know.
that, like...
I think that just shows that the fact that you can't find nuance or sophistication in protests without violence. I think that if you're generationally arguing
That's
at all,
exactly what I was going to argue.
yeah,
Like,
that if you're arguing at all,
Yeah.
that you don't get it. You just don't get it. This is the way things are done now. First of all, shut up. The
Yeah.
Vietnam War protests put you guys just, you know, the Watts riots.
Yeah,
This
like,
is happening
you can-
because you're not.
You can
you're not,
protest the
like-
Vietnam War. You can protest and occupy Wall Street. You can occupy
Yeah.
the bathroom. I don't give a shit. It's when we start looting, rioting, when people are getting hurt. And the tipping point is so much fucking closer than you guys think. I saw some pretty wild shit over the pandemic.
Yeah.
People shoving people over in the grocery stores, ripping a can of beans out of an old man's hand. Like,
Yeah.
wow, guys. I mean, it took almost nothing to push people over the edge. So as much as I don't like it, I believe that we're much closer to an absolutely divided country over
Agreed.
this type of stuff with armed conflict. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility where 7 years ago I would have laughed and said, you're out of your mind. It would take a catastrophic series of events. And it
Yeah.
really didn't. It really just took a narrative.
They slow dripped this narrative into a situation where we are now at a point where if you get told that cough syrup is gonna save you,
Yeah.
And we're running out of cough syrup, that there's going to be full-on rioting and murder in the streets, where instead of finding cough syrup, people are stealing TVs and tennis shoes.
Yeah.
It's like the idea that protesting, which is a fundamental, beautiful right that we as Americans are afforded through natural law or God, however you want to put it, not the government. They don't give us those rights or rules or laws. These are beyond their touch. But let's just say, you know, that these are fundamental rights of protest, but you can do it without violence.
100%.
You don't have to smash a window. You don't have to light a building on fire. You only do that because you're ignorant of what you
Right.
actually, the accomplishment of the long-term goal.
I'll bet you anything I could successfully protest something without gluing my hands to the street, without defacing priceless artwork at the Louvre, without smashing windows at a local Nike
Blocking a
store,
freeway.
without
You know
blocking
what?
the freeway. Yeah.
I always said, like over in Seattle or any metropolitan area, whenever they block the freeway, I was like, what do you think you've got now, 8 miles of supporters?
Right.
You think you got 8 miles of supporters on this freeway? No, now you got 8 miles of people who are like, I don't care about your
Right.
protest.
I'm late to
It
work.
didn't
My
catch
wife's going to
attention.
give birth.
Right.
100%.
You ruined
Yep.
not only my day, but possibly like my life because of this, because I didn't get to where I needed to.
Dude, we saw that.
Like-
We saw that on Capitol Hill. They could not get to
Yeah.
that kid because
Yeah.
they boarded up the Chop Chaz shit. Yeah. It's like, oh, so let me get this straight. The revolutionists that are supporting the radical ideologies and also conflating the BLM message and movement into all of this. The first thing they did was build a wall with concrete barriers, immediately
Right.
simultaneously appropriated government buildings.
Without seeing the irony in any of it.
There's no irony here, but they couldn't get to that kid that got shot up there, and he died as a result of not being able to get emergency services up to the Chop Chaz camp where they had blocked out for what's her ass's Summer of Love in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah.
Get fucked. The amount of hypocrisy in what took place there that is still absolutely unseen. And I had friends of mine argue with me, well, that's what it takes to get some change. You have to break a few eggs. You have to break a few windows. And I'm like, I promise you the change that you're going to see is net negative, and it's going to be the increase in crime rate and the decrease in prosecutions for stuff that protects you. You want to defund the police? Watch what happens. And I was right.
Yep.
So-
Absolutely correct.
That's my point. Like, I love protesting. Trust me. I think it's a fucking amazing, but I'm not a fan of crime. And I think the lines are so damn blurry now that I'm willing to state where I wouldn't have 6 or 7 or 8 years ago that, I think we're at a tipping point where it is now very possible for armed conflict or civil war types of rhetoric. Not that I'm celebrating that by any means. I
Not
think
at
that's
all. No.
that's the worst possible case scenario.
I got
But
kids. You know, my 2 kids are right at that. You know, like I don't want them to have to go through that. I don't want that. So anyone who thinks that we celebrate on this side the concept of going into open conflict,
do not.
Sure, you've got some of those meatheads on both sides, you know, that are like, just try me. Oh, I'm ready, you know, and that's an absurdist point of view because they don't understand and they don't get what's actually going to happen when there's blood on their soil.
Yep.
And the reality is that by any means necessary, avoid it. Do whatever you can to avoid that kind of scenario. But I think that we need to all really take it, and we won't. So I know this is screaming into the
void,
into the ether, into the void, because humanity, because of where we are right now in America. But I don't think, you know, I think if we were all smart, we'd take a look at Venezuela right now and go, is this what you want? Because you're about there. So come November, if this is what you want, you better be careful. You better control your emotions, your actions. You better understand that this, no matter what the outcome, it's not the end of the world. And do not take the bait. Don't take the bait of what they're trying to push you into, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. Do not take the bait.
And it doesn't take much either. Take a brief day trip through the internet on the history of Australia as a prime example. Like that's one exact way of, and everyone will tell you there, everyone will tell you in Argentina, don't let them take your guns, for sure. Definitely don't give that up. But lead with the moral compass if you think you've got one, because I'm willing to bet anything. If you take a vested interest in your neighbor, you take a vested interest in the success of your community, you take a trip down to the school board meeting, you sit in a city hall meeting, you actually vote with leaders that care about the success of your community, and you try to keep the government out of as much as possible, you're going to find you probably disagree with the narrative more than you think on what you're being fed by multiple news sites. You know, whether you're in Middletown, America, whether you're in the inner cities, whether you're in the suburbs, just try for yourself going into this November to actually take a look around.
Much.
It doesn't take a lot.
Much at all. Everyone thinks it takes, like, oh, I don't have the time to invest in it.
Right.
It doesn't take anything. Literally shake a neighbor's hand. Like, take 5 minutes out of your day. Take one of your days off and find some meeting to go to. Invest yourself in your community, and then you will care when people are throwing bottles and bricks at your neighbors. You know, you will care when that happens.
Yep.
And you all of a sudden your perspective will start to change about what community means, and then furthermore what your county means, and furthermore what your state means, and furthermore what your country means, and what it actually means to actually be a part of that community, and top to bottom. And it is something that I don't think anybody's doing right now, and they really need to do it.
If you want to talk about a position of privilege, it is sitting back from an armchair and deducing what you want to believe out of a narrative being fed to you by the internet, which is a miracle in and of itself that we all have the internet, or most of us.
We're feeding opinions on the internet, but that being said,
take a vested interest in the community that is supporting your ability to have these things. Take a vested interest in the people that are elected in positions that have narrative control over what goes on in your town.
Yeah.
How your economy structure is built and what the implications at a national scale all the way to a local one would mean. And then vote with a little bit of knowledge behind it and see where you land on that. It might surprise you. That's all I'm saying. It might surprise you.
Agreed. So I think that people should take a look at what's going on in Venezuela and take it and heed it as a warning. Come November, we're marching very quickly on November, and it's not going to be pretty either way. So I'm a little concerned about how this winter is going to be in this country. But if we all stop, take a look at what's going on in Venezuela and ask yourself, is this what we want?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want this? No matter what the outcome is this what we want? And we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, keep your eyes on Venezuela right now, guys, because that's where we're headed if we're not careful.
I agree. What do you think about doing a little gospel by Gen Z? Maybe turn this ship around a little bit.
Actually, before we do that, can I talk to you about a movie I watched on my way back from your place?
I would love it. What'd you see?
Oh man, I saw the new Ghostbusters movie, the Empire of, hold on, I don't know, like Frosty Empire or some nonsense. I'm trying to get my mouse over here. Frozen Empire, not Frosty Empire. So,
hey, oh my God, Frosty the Snowman came out on this one?
Well, I watched Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Yeah.
And it came out on Netflix, and it worried me because it came out really fast. And so just to clarify really quickly, this is a sequel to the last Ghostbusters kind of reboot, not the all-female one. Mm-hmm. And the all-female one was trash. But my son's favorite movie is Ghostbusters, so we're a big Ghostbusters family. But the reboot we were all kind of nervous for, and we actually loved it. It was heartfelt. It was a good storyline. They really, really did a good job of revitalizing the heart and the humor and the camaraderie of those first two films. It was just, they did a really good homage, and of course it was written by Ivan Reitman, so it was an homage to his father, Harold Ramis. It was an homage to him, who was the only one that had passed away. And then since then, I don't even know who directed this one. Jason Reitman, or Gil Keenan directed it, but Jason Reitman and Ivan Reitman helped write it. But I think Ivan passed away right before the making of the movie. So, but it continues on the story of like the next generation of Egon's daughter and her kids, that, you know, he's got a granddaughter that's just like Egon. And the mom is not a scientist, but she is just with her daughter's science teacher, who's played by Paul Rudd, who does exactly what Paul Rudd does for every movie and injects Paul Rudd into the movie.
Puts himself right in there in a very Paul Rudd kind of way.
Right. Yeah. And to be honest, it's appreciated most of the time. Anytime he's in anything, like this movie could do with more Paul Rudd. Like I appreciate the guy, but I would say, as far as general consensus of this whole film, basically it's a rehash essentially of Ghostbusters 2, more or less. And I think tonally it was the same way. Like, Ghostbusters 1 was amazing. Ghostbusters 2 was good as a sequel, but it's definitely a star or two less than the original Ghostbusters.
Are you ready to be really pissed?
Yeah.
I've never seen a single Ghostbusters movie.
No kidding.
Nope.
I'm not pissed. I'm just bewildered.
I've seen bits and pieces of the first one with, I think, Rick Moranis and Bill Murray in it. Is that right? They played all the hits like in little excerpts. I've never actually sat down and cover to cover watched any of these films, so I'm highly unfamiliar with the franchise other than I think Slimer is a ghost or something they bust.
Yeah.
Like he's one of the dudes.
And they made him like part of the character franchise when they did the cartoons back in the 80s.
Yeah, well, okay, so I've seen a couple
really
of the cartoons.
on him.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm taking your word for everything you're saying here because I have no I have no point of reference for this.
So the second Ghostbusters wasn't a bad movie. Ghostbusters 2, as the sequel goes, but it was just not. It
I
wasn't
can
written
feel
as well.
the hate mail coming. By the way, sorry guys.
Right.
What?
But, but the rebranding of the franchise, like with the first the one that came out a couple years ago, like 2022 or whatever, it was so well done that it really highlighted the first film and really made it a beautiful homage to it. And this one was almost mirroring the 84 to 87 versions of the Ghostbusters 1 and 2, where it was good and I enjoyed it and there were some highlights, but it just didn't have quite the quality the first one had. So great, entertaining. The bad guy was super cool. The CGI was super cool on it. The storyline was actually pretty neat and more in depth than the first one, which is the same as the Ghostbuster 2, where they had the painting and the goo and the ooze. But what they did with this one is they brought everybody, like the Ghostbusters cast, like not the cast, but like the crew, the Ghostbusters crew is all the new people, which is Paul Rudd, his wife, the two kids, this other kid that came from the other movie. Like we got about 5 or 6 of them that all now live in the same old firehouse in New York running Ghostbusters now for her grandfather Egon, who passed away. Well, then also you've got Dan Aykroyd and you've got Bill Murray and you've got Ernie Hudson, who are all actively involved in it now, and they all suit up. And then apparently there's Ernie Hudson has been he became very wealthy and he's been funding the side Ghostbusters like science level project where they study all the ghosts and such. So there's a couple of crew members over there that get brought in who are,
so they have their own like R&D lab now.
Right. Yeah. And so like by the time you get to the final battle, there's like 10 Ghostbusters instead of just like the 4 dudes, you know?
Wow.
And so and they need them all to get the job done with this big baddie. And it was entertaining. It was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
I would say probably 7 megs.
7 megs.
Yeah.
They didn't play the hits. They played the greatest hits, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was good. It was fun. They brought in all the past characters from the last movie, but also the past characters. And then there's like cameos, like Patton Oswalt is in it. And like they've got people who are obviously fans of the franchise that they gave little cameos to throughout the whole thing, which is fairly typical of this franchise. Even ghosts from previous, like in the first one, there's a library scene with this ghost. And she's like a library shushing people, and then she turns into the shrieking thing. They brought her back, but then they also bring in new stuff like a sewer dragon ghost, and then like they've got new equipment. They're using a lot of drones these days now, like a ground drone and then an air drone to have a trap on it so that they can trap the ghosts from the air, stuff like that. It's like they got creative with some of the stuff and they did a really good job, I think, and it was fun. It was a fun movie. I didn't hate it. Was it Ghostbusters 1 or the first revamp of the franchise of Ghostbusters? No, but it was fun enough that I think that it didn't jump the shark. It stuck with the characters and the story. It didn't feel forced or pressed. It felt natural, and it was a solid movie. So a 7 meg movie. It was fine. It was great.
I dig it.
I recommend it.
Now,
Yeah.
I've never, like I mentioned, I've never watched one of these wire to wire, but in my head, I've always imagined people that should be somehow cast in Ghostbusters just as a gut reaction. I think like Kevin Smith has to be involved somehow, and I don't know why, but I just think he'd be great at doing something with the franchise, maybe even acting in it. And I feel
Yeah.
like Christopher Walken belongs in there somehow too.
You're not wrong. Both of those would be good casts for Ghostbusters films.
Yeah.
They fit the kind of tone. But yeah, I think originally Ghostbusters was essentially meant to be like uh, an SNL skit that hit the floor that they never
Yeah.
actually did, and they decided to write it into a full feature length movie and use SNL cast to do it, writers and actors like, Murray and Aykroyd and Ramis, and then they brought in people like Ernie Hudson, but like Rick Moranis being a big part of it early on. And then they brought in Sigourney Weaver as the lead romantic role, and so yeah, it was.
Well,
It was a classic that has really embedded itself in my son Oliver's heart,
yeah.
to the point when we went to Charleston, South Carolina, a couple of years ago prior to the pandemic, and Oliver was probably 10-ish, maybe, I don't remember, something around there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a minor league baseball team there, and the River Dogs, and the South Carolina or Charleston River Dogs, they're owned by Bill Murray. And
Oh, wow.
he loves baseball, and he owns the whole team and the stadium and all that. So like he shows up because he wanders around to people's houses and just goes to house parties that he's uninvited to all the time. There's documentaries on it. It's hilarious, and everyone in Charleston knows him because he just wanders around. But he'll go to the games and just sit with a hot dog and a beer and watch the games in regular seats.
Nice.
And he's totally cool with people coming up and getting pictures with him and shaking his hand. He'll talk with him and stuff. So when we went down there, Oliver wore his Ghostbusters shirt to just in case we
hoping he could draw out the Bill Murray.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But apparently he was in Hollywood filming a terrible zombie movie at the time. So, but yeah, it was not to be, but he tried. But that's how big of a fan my son is. It's like he was hoping. But
Well, I think
yeah.
some really good movies over the years have come out of stuff was an idea that just got shit canned. Like, if Ghostbusters really was just an SNL skit that hit the floor, like pretty famously, The Naked Gun was called The Naked Gun from the files of Police Squad. And Police
Right.
Squad was like a 6-episode run that got immediately canceled of like, a series that like embodies all the characters from The Naked Gun and stuff, which is turned out to be a pretty funny movie. Like what they
absolutely.
what they made
Leslie
later.
Nielsen.
Yeah, they made a bunch later on, and it was like it kind of went downhill, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But it started to peter off with the
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot. There was a time frame with like the Hot Shots movies and the Naked Gun movies where
Yeah.
that kind of like absurdist, slapsticky kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Was that you could go to those movies and have fun with them, but the joke kind of got beaten into the ground to the point where they were running out of ideas on a lot of that stuff.
yeah,
And
they
just
have
kinda-
like
the
a Hall
the
of Fame
genre kinda
baseball
died.
player that's like playing a serial killer, an NFL football player that literally became a serial killer because O.J. Simpson's in
Right.
that. Like, there's a lot of weirdness with that movie long term, but that type of humor I think is pretty fucking hilarious. Just
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll give
I fully
Ghostbusters a
agree.
spin before I get crucified online. So
Yeah,
Nice.
And you can watch the '84 original,
Mhm.
the '87 #2. You can skip the 2016 all-female recast because it not only does it's boring, it's just and it's unbelievably dumb.
just bad.
Like, and it for something that's supposed to be kind of dumb, they missed the point. Like
Yeah.
it's supposed to be about a bunch of like out of touch scientists who are all like going down this paranormal path. They all work at schools that they're getting kicked out
Ah.
of because they've gone and so they're all these scientists that are not superheroes. They are nerdy, like not in shape dudes who are then put on jumpsuits and
Yeah.
because of science become heroes, and they're not like action stars or anything, but
Yeah.
they start to fall into the role of being kind of celebrities, where this one with the females, they're doing like barrel rolls with their laser weapons and like jumping into and
Oh,
like
no,
holding
there's-
onto cables.
There's
and-
Star Fox. That's not good.
yeah, yeah, and it becomes that, and you're like, dude, and the only like in the original franchise, they had a played by Annie Potts. She was their secretary for the thing, and she was smart, and she ended up becoming the love interest for Egon. But she was smart and sassy and rolled her eyes at these dumb guys who were socially stupid but like brilliant genius, scientists, right? But she was very dry humor, really great character in that show.
Yeah.
Well, the counterpart to it in the all-female cast 2016 was actually played by Chris Hemsworth, and he actually stole the whole movie because he was the funniest part of the movie by far. But they were going so far to press on the fact that he was so stupid that he didn't know how fish tanks work or phones, or like he was wearing glasses and it didn't have a lens and he scratched his eyes through the glass. Like over the top stupid. He was just dumb and they just made fun of him for being dumb and he didn't realize they were making fun of him for being dumb. And it was just kind of like a feminist jab. And we're like, well, they didn't do that to the Annie Potts character. What are you doing here? Like they just kind of flipped the whole thing on its head and turned it into an action movie for Melissa McCarthy doing barrel rolls, and you're like, it's wildly unbelievable. The story was boring. The only saving grace is the character that you tried to downplay and make look stupid. And so it was a horrible rendition of the franchise. So skip it entirely. You can throw it out the window. But the next two, so you've got 4 movies you can watch, and I think you'll enjoy it. I think it's something that you'll like. The humor, the pacing of it is always great. It's fun. The CG is fun. It's not spooky, so it's not like a horror film.
Any movie like that's 80 to 90 minutes is probably bite-sized enough for me to just sit through it, even if I hate it. But yeah, it has all the right ingredients for sure. I just never got around to it, I guess. There's a couple out there that I'm like, it's been on my list. I just never actually, and I've seen scenes of this movie a lot. But that was my story with Jurassic Park for years. Like I'd seen all the big hits and the big scenes, and it's been played to death. Never got around to watching it until, I don't know, I was 18, 19, 20, something like that. So
that movie still holds up. The first Jurassic Park movie, the CG in that movie still holds up. Like,
it's impressive now. Like, was ILM behind that one too?
I believe so. Yeah. And that was 93.
Yeah.
And you still watch that movie and you don't see like fake and animated dinosaurs. You see dinosaurs. Yeah. And it's incredible.
Jurassic Park 3 we could have done without.
Yeah.
I didn't care for that one so much, but one Lost World was cool, and the new ones. I think they made another new one a year or two ago that I haven't seen. But I watched the first one.
I've been able to keep up with them.
Yeah, I ended
up watching one out of order, and it messed me up because I thought I had missed multiple, and I was like, okay, I gotta watch these. And I watched one, and I was like, I don't think I understand what's going on. It turned out I had missed an entire Jurassic World movie. So
I don't know. I saw the first one with Chris Pratt and Dallas. What's her name?
Bryce Dallas Howard or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. Bryce Dallas Howard. Anyway, I'll check them out. I like it. All right. It's time.
Time for some Gen Z.
It's Gospel by Gen Z, guys.
I need some biblical edification.
Now, you were stoked about this. I'm stoked about this. This is chapter 17. Get behind me.
Get behind me, Satan.
Jesus told the chat, soon the religious Karens will throw hands. And they will have me unalived. But Divine G's dad reflexes will kick in, and he will come in clutch for me. For I will ghost the tomb on the 3rd day. For I have the infinite life glitch. But first I must take this L to fulfill the divine dad lore for this canon event. Peter said, bruh, may God come in clutch and may you always live your best life. For Peter was doing too much. But Jesus saw the chat watching, so he turned to Peter, who he surnamed the Rock, and gave him bombastic side eye, and said to him, get behind me, op of ops, for you don't understand the assignment, and your plans for me are not lore accurate. Then Jesus said to the chat, hear me out. If you would stand me and secure the eternal bag, accept your L's so the divine G may turn them into dubs. For if you cling to this midlife, with what hands will you catch eternal life? So don't be caught lacking when the son of the top G pulls up, alright? It's chapter 17, get behind me. It's a good time.
Yeah. Peter got told.
With bombastic side eye.
Yeah.
Unreal.
As you would imagine Jesus would give bombastic side
Bombastic side eye.
Yeah.
It is truly the book that keeps giving. So we're slowly churning this out, guys. We're at, I think this is episode maybe 34. I'll have to check the subscript. It's coming up on a really good time. We're coming up on actually getting on social media. We've had some back and forth even today trying to get the accounts back in order and up. So you can check us on X. You can check us out on Instagram here after today, I think.
Yep.
I think we're on the Facebooks. I haven't used Facebook in a decade, so couldn't tell you if that's the hop.
I'll be handling that. I'll answer all of that.
Yeah, the happening or hop to stuff. Not too sure there. I do check our email. You can email us at what are we? modernrelicspodcast@gmail.com, which is exciting.
Yes.
And I'll continue to ideate on getting us a studio worked out because you're going to hopefully be a frequent flyer this way. And that's going to be super, super excite bike.
That was a good game.
Yeah, it was until you overheat.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. Because I never took my thumb off the throttle. I just overheated and dealt with it.
That game probably subconsciously prepared me for motorcycling in the area that I live now.
Yeah,
because my bike will routinely overheat.
Primer course.
Yeah, it really was. It's like, I know what to do here. Ease off the throttle, sit on the side of the road and blink and shake. Wah, 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 wah. And then once I'm done blinking, I can re-engage the throttle and get back in the race. So
yeah.
I think, you got anything else? I think that's it for tonight.
I
right?
don't. I think
2 hours.
we covered it all. Yeah.
Yeah, we hit everybody for 2 hours. We love you guys. Thanks. I see.
Thank you guys.
Our stats are going up. I love to see it. I appreciate you coming in and hanging out and chat as we do this YouTube live. And we'll see you hopefully next week. Pops is coming to visit, so I might be able to put some content up around our schedule. We'll see how that goes.
That'd be fun.
Otherwise, plan to see you hopefully next Tuesday.
Be here next Tuesday.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.